sends approximately $300 billion a year to the federal government.
Right.
Then they send back a portion of it with strings attached, okay? Okay, here's my question. Well, I'm going to say this first. When a body is losing too much blood to survive, it will shut down flow to the extremities to preserve the heart and other organs. Are we going to be, if we can't shut down that flow first, because secession seems like, or Texas independence, as you say, seems like a very, very, very slow process. If we cannot shut down the flow and preserve that money in Texas, well, how will we possibly be not bankrupt with the rest of the country?
Well, here's the figures, okay? And just for the sake of information, because everyone, this is one that we hear often, which is, how are we going to survive that federal dollars?
No, I'm not.
No, I know, but I'm laying the ground. I'm going to get there,
Okay.
but give me just a chance here.
Okay.
Just so you guys understand, because you're going to hear that an awful lot, okay? And I promise it's going to segue into what Claudia's talking about. But Texas, regardless of what the Huffington Post says or MSNBC, Texas puts far more into the federal system than we get back. Okay? The Economist magazine, you guys see the copies of The Economist, recently released a study, they had a little graphic there, and showed that over the last 20 years, Texas has been upside down to the tune of about $300 billion. Okay? Now, what we've got here is a situation where Texas puts into the federal system every single solitary year between $277 and $320 billion. Year to year, you just have to kind of figure that out. Of that, they dole back a certain percentage of it, which is less than what we put into the system, and that's also across goods and services, okay? But here's what's more interesting than that. The state still has to pay for the things that the state has paid for, right? The things that have been constitutionally required to pay for. And so what has happened is our state legislature has been relegated to three responsibilities: medicate, incarcerate, and educate, right? I mean, that's it. That's where they're at. That's what they've been relegated to. But what most people don't calculate is that out of that budget money that they have to take, in addition to the federal tax burden on Texans, half of the state budget, half, is locked down by federal mandates. So, yes, it's still coming out of our pockets, but the state says you got to spend it this way. So this leads me into what Claudia's talking about, which is, with this hemorrhaging, can we afford to be independent until we cut the tap off? The fact of the matter is, we can't afford to not be independent, because worrying about the flow out, you've got a choice. You can try to stop up the hole a little bit, and they're going to nickel and dime you to death, or you chop it off. I would say going from a small percentage to zero is much more desired. And independence, and I think what it is predicated on, you're talking about independence taking a long time.
It will, and we could be bleeding to death in the meantime.
Well, I don't necessarily agree that independence would necessarily take a long time. It's going to take as long as we let it take. And this is what I tell people. I was at a rally one time, and someone came to me after I spoke, and they said, Mr. Miller, how long is it going to be before we get our independence? And my answer, and I promise you I'm not being facetious, it's going to take as long as you let it take. Article 1, Section 2 of the current Texas Constitution says that all political power is inherent in the people, and they have at all times an inalienable right to reform, alter, abolish, or form of government in such manner as they may think expedient. The timeline that we are on is finite. At this point is no more. The window of opportunity is done. The system of control is in place. We are bankrupt. It's going to take as much time as you let it take. And so, again, this is why the sense of urgency. This is why the sense of urgency for well over a decade now. Because we've seen this day coming. And that's why we need as many people as possible to not only become aware of the situation, but to also engage in it.